Tree owners, I expect that this will be useful to you in choosing a tree care professional. Tree care professionals, I expect you are already intimate with the Z133 safety standard. Tree activists, especially tree sitters, I've been on YouTube and I've seen some of the stuff you use for safety in trees, and it ain't cutting it, folks. I don't want to get into the politics of tree sitting, although it's not a topic I'm afraid to breach. But let's not make a bad situation worse by having somebody fall out of a tree that they were trying to save. So this is my attempt to give you an idea of some of the topics that are covered in this 60+ page document called the ANSI Z133 Safety Requirements for Arboricultural Operations, Traffic Control around the job site, Emergency Procedures and Readiness, Personal Protective Equipment, Fire Protection, Working in proximity to electrical hazards, line clearance pruning, safely using aerial devices, safely using brush chippers, safely using sprayers and fertilizer equipment, safely handling pesticides and fertilizers, even organic ones. Some of the organic pesticides we have are pretty darn toxic. Safely operating stump cutters, driving on the road. Tree care professionals are tree care professionals, and they're not professional truck drivers. That's why some of the tree care trucks have specially built transmissions for people who have to drive big trucks but aren't professional truck drivers. Road safety is probably the #1 statistical cause of accidents in the tree care business. It happens on the road, not on the job site. Log loaders, knuckle booms, cranes, equipment mounted winches, skid steers, backhoes, portable electric power tools, cabling and bracing gear, lightning protection equipment, and then the procedures of work. Safety when pruning trees, safety when installing cables, safe rigging safe rigging, which is the practice of safely bringing down big pieces of wood as a tree is being dismantled. So let me now direct you to some of the tools. This is called a chainsaw chaps. This is a pretty clean pair. It's well used, but the chainsaw chaps have Kevlar fiber inside them. Well, it's not necessarily Kevlar. Depends on the model, but they have a fiber in there that instantaneously clogs the sprocket and stops the chainsaw at the precise moment that it comes in contact with the chain. The Z133 safety standard requires that all chainsaw operators be wearing these chaps. There is no exception in Canada. In the United States, there is an exception for operators of chainsaws aloft in trees. This is a throw ball. This is a throw line. So a throw ball is used to get your line in the tree if you're not going to climb it from the ground. And for really tall trees, we use a slingshot. This slingshot gets mounted, it gets affixed to the end of a pole. This is a descension device, and you rock climbers will think this looks mighty familiar. but the weight rating is completely different from the weight rating on most rock climbing equipment. These are devices for ascending a tree and working in a tree, lanyards for holding onto your chainsaw. You can see that here's a saddle that I was just wearing. This is called the Cougar. It's manufactured by a weaver. It's a pretty good saddle. It has independent leg straps and a floating bridge. This is the safety lanyard. When I said up in the tree that I was double tied in, that was what I meant. There are also older models. This much older saddle from about 7 years ago. It's still serviceable. Instead of having independent leg straps, it has a hard seat. It's a really good saddle. This is by Buckingham. Why do I have a mallet out? That wasn't just a paperweight for my Z133. The mallet is used by a tree climber. Tree climber should inspect the base of the tree, visually inspect the whole tree for glaring defects that might render it unsafe to climb. And I use that term loosely because all trees are unsafe. There's no such thing as a safe tree. The rubber mallet can be used all the way up the tree, sounding for cavities. This is a type of what we call a climbing inspection too, wherein the tree climber reports to the property owner or property manager what defects he or she found while climbing the tree, if any. Cavities, fungal fruiting structures, cracks, hairline fractures, vertical splits, etc. So as long as we're here, let's take a look at this brush chipper and we'll talk about, doesn't look like my battery's going to allow that to happen. So let me plug in and we'll look at the brush chipper from afar. I have the dual benefit of hiding from the wind next to my car. So this is a pretty good sized brush chipper. You can guess that understanding what it's capable of and knowing how to operate it safely is pretty important. Fortunately, accidents with chippers don't happen too often, and when they do, they end up in the news. I don't intend to go through in detail all of the various aspects of tree safety. This is more of an overview, but we can go into much greater detail predicated upon listener feedback. The final thing that I want to point out, and perhaps I should have pointed it out at the beginning, is that safety is a habit. I went to high school in the 1980s when people were really just starting to use seat belts. Seat belts were not popular in the 70s. And then they started having seatbelt laws. They were what do they call them? A class 2 misdemeanor. At the time, you couldn't get pulled over for not having a seatbelt, but if you got pulled over for something else, it was a secondary violation. Well, nowadays, you feel naked without a seatbelt. Everybody does. I mean, there are very few people left who don't wear seatbelts. I'm not saying that this is a glory of regulation, but I am saying that this is one of the benefits of awareness, of safety consciousness. I don't think we needed seatbelt regulation to get where we are today, but we are where we are today because of awareness. People made it a habit to wear their seatbelts, and nowadays you're hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't wear one. You wouldn't even dream of putting your car in gear without it. I wouldn't. And so, tree care professionals, hard hat, safety glasses, I know what a 106-degree day is like too. So do these guys back here that are working. I know that chainsaw chaps are not comfortable on a hot day. Hard hats are not comfortable on a hot day. Safety glasses are not comfortable on a hot day. Nobody said anything about comfortable. And you may say, well, it seems stupid to wear a hard hat in a tree. You're the highest person up on the job. What's going to fall on you? Wearing a hard hat is part of adjusting your habits and being safe. Besides, that's fallacious. You can really have a head injury while you're up in a tree. I was at a Texas tree conference in October, and an owner-operator and I were talking about safety and the habitual use of personal protective equipment, and he says, come on, you know your guys take off their hard hats when you're not around. I was like, really? Well, I mean, it's now 22 months worth of surprise inspections. Hard hat every time. And, well, knock on wood, it's not to say it won't happen tomorrow. But my point is that, well, I told this guy, I said, look, if you suspend your alpha dog for 3 days without pay for not wearing his hard hat, people will start wearing their hard hats. Wearing a seatbelt in a truck. Tree guys are stubborn old sons. Doesn't matter if they're Hispanic, or if they're Filipino, if they're Czech, or what their background is. Tree guys can be stubborn. They can be hard-living guys. They do a dangerous profession. Sometimes they consider themselves lucky that they made through the day. They can also get cocky and arrogant. So seatbelt use, personal protective equipment use, chainsaw chaps on a 100-degree day. Make it a habit. I've heard it takes 3 weeks to change or create or form or break a habit. That's probably true. Make it part of your culture. Have a program. If you don't have at least one safety meeting a week at your office, you're wrong. You gotta have them. Homeowners, tree owners, property managers, ask these questions. What's your safety program like? You know, what's your safety culture like in your office? How do you guys say, oh yeah, we're safety conscious. If you don't have a standard operating procedure in your office, a safety program written down, give me a call and I'll help you write one. I mean, don't let this go another day. If you need 52 topics, I'll help you put 52 topics together. tree activists, tree sitters, go on the internet and buy some of this gear. Quit getting your climbing gear from the rock climbing supply store. There's also recreational tree climbing sites. Some of the stuff you use to spend the night up in these trees is pretty ratty too. Give me a call. Let me know what your rig looks like. I won't ask you anything about whether or not the tree you intend to sit in is privately owned. But I will offer you some suggestions about how to go about engaging in your own brand of civil disobedience without adding a casualty to the equation. Call me with any questions you might have. Thank you for tuning in.